You know, if you put Brock Purdy with Urban Meyer on that Jaguar team, it looks nothing like what he looks like on the Niners. We can all acknowledge that, right?
Yep, no doubt.
Know, you've heard this for years. Well, if Joe Montana was drafted by the Tampa Bay Bucks, ask Steve Young. I've read his book Quarterback 1,000 times, QB. And he's like, dude, Tampa, we had no chance.
No chance.
You had no chance. I got to the Niners, and I thought that I was working for a Fortune 500 company where I had no shot of not succeeding, where everyone, if I wanted to be the best version of myself, I had to compete there. The Andrew Luck situation is a great example, and he is one of the great prospects outside of Elway.
He's unbelievable.
Right?
Coming off that Orange Bowl against Virginia Tech. I mean, going to those games, the way he worked tight ends, Andrew Luck was...
Pre-snap, just pointing.
I loved Andrew Luck at quarterback.
Me too. He's my prototype.
When they came to Kettlestick Park the weekend, Alden Smith got into that trouble. In that fourth quarter, Andrew Luck put on a clinic, and I just remember him walking into the end zone on that quarterback bootleg, spiking the ball, just yelling at Kettlestick, yeah! And I was like, does he have something against Harbaugh? Is there something there? Like, what is up with that relationship?
In the history of the game, coming out of college as a prospect, not what you know them to be, their Hall of Fame resume and all that, as a prospect, it's Elway and Andrew Luck, to me, that are the two prototype #1 overall quarterback.
You don't put Peyton Manning there?
I prefer a little bit of speed and the arm strength. Peyton Manning's definitely
was
no doubt.
There were some people that thought Ryan Leaf.
There was the bloodline too with that, right? Because of Archie Manning. No, but I, if you're asking me what I prefer the Elway, Andrew Luck style.
Well,
even though Elway was more dynamic than Andrew Luck.
Elway was. I mean, you had every team in the league, including the 49ers, trying to trade up for John Elway. He was can't miss.
And Michael Vick, I loved, but I didn't know he would do that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I didn't know he was going to, I was like, I don't know what this is going to look like.
But John Elway, I mean, he was going to be a Raider. But Al Davis was busy still in the NFL, and Pete Rozelle was like, yeah, we're not going to let that happen. He's not getting John Elway. I mean, he was going to trade away Greg Townsend, Howie Long, or something like that?
It's going to be Marcus Allen and John Elway. Wow.
Well, and then Bo Jackson the next year.
And then they said
that's what Bo Jackson said, I'm not playing for Tampa Bay. And he said he got a call from Al Davis, said, would you like to be a Raider? And Bo Jackson's eyes lit up.
The situation matters, though, right?
Matter,
it really does matter.
Well, so I'm looking at quarterback misses right now, right?
Yeah.
Tony Banks, Michigan State. I don't think he was really that good.
No, Achilles Smith.
But Tony Banks and Achilles Smith.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was a mess.
Yeah,
was a mess.
Kajana Carter.
St. Louis Rams were a mess with Tony Banks. Yeah. So I think situation, and we're learning this in baseball, maybe not so much in baseball as opposed to basketball and football. Fit, situation, the culture of the situation,
absolutely,
it all matters.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Now, are there certain comments, CJ Stroud, everything just aligns perfectly and you come in and you ball out. Right. But we might look back on history and Tank Dell ends up being X, and D'Amico Ryans ends up being some famous coach. I mean, we saw him firsthand with the Niners.
But that's a great
D'Amico Ryans is this high level of a person as come. But that organization has been a dumpster fire for a decade.
But one guy can change that.
No
D'Amico
doubt.
did. There were some Niner fans who wanted D'Amico to take over for Shanahan at one point. It's like, give D'Amico the job. We don't want him to leave or whatnot. I think they're doing fine with Shanahan. But that you were talking about Bryce Young during the break. In that situation in Carolina, now they have a new coach.
He has no chance to win.
They have a new coach, the OC from Tampa Bay.
There's no players.
But Deontay Johnson's now there. We'll see what happens there. But the situation
is horrible.
Very dire.
Yeah.
You're thinking wow, they had DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. What if he went into that situation?
I acknowledge, I don't think Alex Smith was great. I don't.
But the situation was worse.
I don't know many players that would have overcome it. Now, do I think Aaron Rodgers would have been better than Alex Smith, even given all the same circumstances? Yes, I do.
For example, I'm looking at this draft in 1999. But I think he would have struggled too. I'm looking at the situation of the draft 1999. This draft was hot.
Give it to me.
Because I remember this as a kid. Yeah. You had Tim Couch coming out. Can't miss prospect number 1 out of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about him in high school. He was on all the high school magazines.
SEC.
He was all on high school magazines. But even before that, he was before he got to Kentucky, he was a can't miss prospect going into college. And then you had Donovan McNabb go number 2 overall to Philadelphia, and they booed because they wanted Ricky Williams. Syracuse. Then you had Achilles Smith out of Oregon. Was it him and Marvin Harrison together? They were together for a year, maybe. For a year,
okay, yeah.
But McNabb and then Achilles Smith out of Oregon.
Yep.
And then you had Then you had Culpepper go to Minnesota, 11 overall. Culpepper. Get your roll on. What if McNabb goes to Minnesota and Culpepper goes to Philly?
That's a great question.
McNabb is probably in the Hall of Fame.
I loved Cole.
I still think McNabb is a Hall of Famer, but that situation, he goes to Minnesota, and there's Randy Moss and Chris Carter with Donovan McNabb. Are you kidding me? People misremember how good Donovan McNabb was.
Yeah, Culpepper was pretty sweet, too.
He was sweet.
I love Culpepper.
But McNabb,
no doubt. But he had Andy Reid, too.
But, Minnesota had Moss, and they had Chris Carter.
He's throwing to Todd Pinkston.
And James Thrash. And then Kate McDowell. Remember Kate McDowell at UCLA?
They said he was the next Steve Young because he was left-handed.
I thought he was. I mean, not the next Steve Young.
Come on.
Not the next Steve Young.
But, yes, that was what he was.
But that situation in Chicago.
I thought he'd be better.
It was a terrible situation in Chicago.
Rick Myers, one of my favorite Notre Dame quarterbacks of all time. He went to a horrible Seattle situation.
Yep.
And I thought he had no chance to succeed.
No chance. Who was Kate McDowell throwing to in college? It was Drew Bennett.
I was going to jump.
Miramonte High School.
It was Mercedes Lewis. He's been in the league for 40 years.
Could have been. But no, Drew Bennett.
Yeah.
And you know what happened to UCLA that year? They were undefeated. They were number 1 in the country. They had a game postponed against Miami.
Was that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, too, around the same time? The running back?
He was around the same time, but I don't know if he was on that team. The running back, not
the basketball player?
I don't know if he was on that team.
Okay.
But they played Miami. The game got postponed due to a hurricane. Hurricane Woody, so they postponed it all the way to December. This is after they played USC. They go down to Miami. And I was talking to Ryan East, Ronnie Lott's son, about this. Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl. And I was like, I remember the game because they didn't show it locally. They did live look-ins. Or not live look-ins, but they would do updates of the game.
Think of how things have changed. Now I can watch 75 games simultaneously on YouTube TV.
Dude, so they go down to Miami, and I think they lose something like, I don't know, you guys can fact check this. It was like 45-42. And UCLA loses because Edgerrin James runs for 300 yards.
The edge?
The edge. And that cost Kate McDowell the shot at the national championship. They end up going to play Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, and they get beat by Grondé and company. It was just unbelievable. But Kate McDowell, I love that UCLA team. Bob Toledo was the head coach. And they were the cardiac kids. They were always falling behind, and they were just chucking it. Kate was chucking it. I thought he was going to be a star in the NFL. He was not. And that kind of proves our point that the situation does matter.
So now going back to the Aiyuk thing, if the situation matters, and they do end up moving off Brandon Aiyuk, you still have CMC, you still have Debo, you still have Kittle, you still have Trenton Brock, and Kyle Shanahan, the architect. If you take a wide receiver, even if it takes a year, you got to think now you could just whiff and the guy just cannot play like Dante Pettis. He just might not be able to play. But boy, this is a great situation to find out if you can play or not. The infrastructure's there.
Well, how about this? Something we haven't touched on in this situation. How much pressure will be on that rookie if you do trade Aiyuk and replace him? Because I always believe this to my core. I don't know if there's any proof to this, but I thought Kinlaw not necessarily set up to fail, but first of all, it's the pandemic season, so you can't come into the facility until training camp starts. Remember the whole COVID protocols. So I believe that set him back, not getting around Chris Kosaric right away instead of waiting, and then there's some injuries there. But also, you draft Kinlaw to replace Buckner, who was a fan favorite and a great member of the community. That was another thing. He was a great member of the community, did a lot of things off the field. So you trade him, you draft Kinlaw, and you say replace Buckner, and oh, by the way, here's his number 99.
Yeah, that wasn't the greatest move.
So the pressure on Kinlaw, now he may not just be a good player.
Well, I would leave
he may not be a good player.
Yeah.
But the pressure, basically my point though, is the pressure to produce on a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl now. They're playing next to Debo and Kittle and CMC and Purdy, and they don't have time to wait. Shanahan's not a patient guy anyway. We all know that. Shanahan and patience do not get along. That's a lot of pressure for somebody stepping in for a guy who made second team All-Pro at the wide receiver position. That's a lot.
Well, so like we referenced it in the Florio interview, Stephon Diggs was a great player for Minnesota, and they traded him to Buffalo, and Justin Jefferson was tasked with trying to, replace him.
Right.
He didn't just replace him. I mean, he was Randy Moss historic in terms of how good he was. I believe that pressure is a part of it, but if you're good enough, you'll just overcome it. Brock Purdy had pressure his rookie year coming in and replacing Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't think?
The fans were split on Jimmy, though.
And then moving off of everyone?
How many fans were happy to move off of Jimmy? I get the pressure.
There
was a lot of pressure there.
I don't know.
There's a
lot of pressure.
There was a lot of pressure.
I don't know. I do believe I think talent overrides things, and are you good or not? Now, pressure is a factor, but I don't think it's the defining factor.
No, it's not. I didn't say it was a defining factor. Yeah. I wasn't saying that at all.
It's a factor,
but it's a huge factor. Yeah, I think it's a huge factor. You're coming into a situation think about the Warriors for crying out loud. Kuminga, Moody, Pods, TJD, you want to go Wiseman, you want to go Poole. Coming into this situation, it has not been easy for those guys. Have the Warriors made it easy? Probably not.
This is James Wiseman.
But that's not an easy situation to go into, playing with guys who have won championships.
So, then my pivot would be like, well, the only guy to leave the team is Wiseman. What's Wiseman's problem in Detroit? There's zero pressure.
Poole got traded.
I know, but I'm saying Wiseman, there's zero pressure in Detroit.
But you're not playing.
He's just not good
There's so many guys. There's so many guys here. It's not a good team, not a good situation. Okay. He may not be good enough, but there was a lot of pressure on him to say, hey, come save the dynasty. You know, Kuminga and Moody are facing that now. If they move off of Klay Thompson and Chris Paul moves on, and I'm watching OKC last night, and you got Moody and Kuminga stepping up for huge roles, well, guess what? If they don't produce at a high level, guess who's going to be scapegoated on this team with the Golden State Warriors? Whether it's fair or not, it's going to be Kuminga and Moody saying they can't help extend it. They're not good enough. The big three needs help, blah, 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 blah. It's not an easy situation.
Watching the situation. You know what I'm saying? But I also just think that in sports, we overvalue, overdraft, mismanage.
We do all that.
You know what I mean? Like, it's all the player just might not be good enough.
It might not be good enough. They might not be good enough, but that's your chance. If Flynn was talking about it, he would not trade Aiyuk because of the chance of something happening, something the player not panning out.
Oh, this is definitely risky. Like, that's one thing that we, like, you and I can agree on this. It's tremendously risky. Tremendously risky. But if you're banking on the coach, if you're banking on the situation, you're banking on the quarterback, they think their odds aren't as risky as maybe the outside does.
Like 510, for example, as you are listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ, FM, and AC1 San Francisco, an Odyssey sports station. Haha, got it in. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Don't forget that you can also watch us every single day on our YouTube and Twitch streams. Just log on to search 95.7 The Game. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel while you are there. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Upgrade your savings dividend. Open a First NorCal First Class Money Market today. You can now download the Odyssey app directly from the QR code on our Twitch and YouTube channels. Shout out to the Xfinity mobile text line as well. 925-510. I wanted to read this one. Juwan Jennings, wide receiver number 2. How would we feel as a fan base if Juwan Jennings went into week 1 as wide receiver number 2?
Is he wide receiver number 2 week 8 and week 16?
He's wide receiver number 2 all season long. Now things could change, but he's going into the season.
Well, he's going into the season. Yeah, he's
wide receiver number 2.
It wouldn't be optimal, but it'd be like appropriate. And then, you know, are we kind of increase someone's workload so that they can get to that spot? How many, like, is the guy unplayable? You know, like, we kind of found out almost immediately, like Solomon Thomas, you almost can't even play him on starter downs. Like,
exactly.
You know, like, are we at that point with whoever the replacement is? And then, I have to know more.
All right. Well, you have to know more then. Well,
look,
this is what I know about Aiyuk.
You're taking a step back if Jennings is your number 2 in day 1. That's no doubt about it. But you're hoping by week 16
somebody else pops.
Yeah, you're in a different spot.
Like having a Debo ascension because Debo got better.
And here's the other part of this. What if the Brandon Aiyuk trade not only netted me a wide receiver, but it also made my offensive line better?
Maybe. Ooh.
That's a trade-off I'm willing to maybe look at.
George Schultz, our boy from Bleacher Report, George Schultz, the Schultz Report, reported that the Giants have been trying to trade up to number 3 with the Patriots, with the belief being they want North Carolina quarterback Drake May. Ugh. They want Drake
Don't hurt
May.
yourself reaching for that platter.
I'm glad I don't want Drake May.
Oh, my God. Dayball's getting fired.
We're going to play some Florio sound. I want to push back on Florio a little bit. He was like, he barely scraped 1,000 yards in 2022. Okay, that's fair.
That's what I said.
But as a rookie, 748 yards on 60 catches. Sophomore year, 23 years old. Remember, he started that year in the doghouse. 2021, he was in the doghouse. Trent Sherfield started the first game of the season. Aiyuk, 56 catches, 826 yards, and that was with a banged-up Jimmy Garoppolo. We know how we feel about Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback. Aiyuk kind of touched on that. I was like, who would you rather have, Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo? And he was like, Trey Lance. This was recently. And then, of course, last year, 2 seasons ago, 1,000 yards, and last year, 13. So his production has gone up every single season.
But what if I said to you that he had a career year and you already paid 2 different guys off career years, Kittle and Deebo Samuel, and they didn't look great a year and a half later?
Well, that's because you didn't take care of business early on with their contracts. Deebo comes in out of shape. Bosa doesn't come in, and he blames missing training camp on him having a bad year. Get this deal done. Get this guy in camp. He's been one of your better players in camp. We said that 2 years in a row about Brandon Aiyuk.
No doubt.
Maybe 3. 3 years in a row, really. I think it's been that good, so I don't know. Nick and Berkeley on the other side. We'll come back. 888